Alright, so we're going to start. We're holding on the last 3 chapters of the first segment of the Tanya, the one that is mostly learned. Zat Hashem will be covering the rest of the book as well after the holidays. These last 3 chapters are very, very special. The whole book is special. But they are unique in that they touch upon the concept of the Shekhinah. How the Shekhinah, the divine presence, can dwell in this world, can dwell on an individual. So this is an important idea that we need to relate to, because we're talking about the divine presence, how it affects us, and how we affect it. So the entire book leads up to this, in trying to understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with this world, how he did not only create the world, but he's actually involved, and how he continues to guide events. All of this relates to the Shekhinah. It relates really to the bigger picture called Hashgacha, divine providence. But the focus here on the Shekhinah is significant because we'll be talking about that light that we've been discussing all along. What exactly is that light from the Shekhinah? What does it mean to us? How does the Neshama experience it? What does it do to it? So if you notice from the very beginning of the Sefer Tanya, of this book, there's been an emphasis on a very important pasuk, very important verse in the Torah, Ki karov elecha davar me'od beficha u'belvavecha la'asoto, that the word of Hashem is very close, it's accessible. You can observe it in your mouth, in your heart. You can do it. You can apply it. And that word la'asoto really tells us everything. What I mean by everything is about the purpose of life, about the purpose of choosing this earth, this physical earth, as opposed to the more spiritual realm, which exists as well. Why did Hashem have to make a physical earth and put his focus on this physical realm? This is where he puts his entire focus. What for? So in studying the Tanya, we see that the ultimate purpose of creation is for the world to observe mitzvot, especially for the Jewish people to observe mitzvot, and by doing so, they are revealing the light of Hashem in the physical world. Because this light of Hashem, even though it encompasses the entire universe, it is concealed. Who's going to reveal it? Who's going to tell everyone that Hashem exists? Who's going to explain to people what the purpose of life is? Why are we here? What is the mission of man? What is the mission of the Jew? So in order to achieve that, mitzvot are performed. So if that is the case, then mitzvot, the commandments, are part of the tachlit. They're part of the ultimate goal, the Torah that was given to the Jewish people. And these mitzvot need to be observed in practice. What does that mean? Not just to think about it, not just to talk about it, but they have to actually be la'asoto, as the pasuk says. They need to be fulfilled. And in order to further elaborate on this, he told us in chapter 35, in describing the chain of descent of the various worlds, when he was speaking about the gradual descent of the various worlds until we arrive at the physical, because the worlds above are more spiritual. So in the gradual descent, going through the many tzimtzumim, or contractions of the light, from above to below, until we reach the bottom world, where the focus is of avodat Hashem, the service of Hashem. This is in the end where the light is to be revealed. Why here? Because it is revealed to some extent in the upper worlds, where there's less tzimtzum. But here, as a result of the many, many tzimtzumim, as a result of the many contractions and concealment, which is a lot greater in this world, it is incumbent upon us, more so here than anywhere else. This is where the focus is, that we bring that revelation to light. In other words, that we somehow do something to bring about the revelation of that light that is so concealed in this physical world. But it's not only about revealing the light of Hashem. In performing the mitzvot, we do something else. We elevate this physical world. We transform it into a more spiritual place. For what purpose? For the ultimate goal of enabling the Shekhinah to dwell in this world. In order for it to have a dwelling place, there needs to be something done to prepare this physical world as an abode for Hashem, for the Shekhinah. And this will lead us to the topic of the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy of Holies, the temple. Why was that place chosen, that particular spot? After all, Hashem fills the entire universe. His light is everywhere. So that is something that we're going to go through in this chapter, in trying to gain a little bit more clarity as to what does it mean, or how do we differentiate between Hashem on the one hand filling the entire universe, on the other hand He focuses on one spot. Is that possible? Yes, because we will be talking about the difference between Hashem's presence being everywhere, not one spot without Him, versus Hashem's greater revelation in some areas more than in others. So in order to understand focus, that Hashem focuses on a certain individual, Hashem focuses on a certain country, right? We're talking about the revelation. Revelation is what can increase or decrease, but Hashem is equally everywhere, in this world, in that world, not one spot without Him. So it's the revelation that is the key over here. Then he went on to explain, he quoted from the Zohar, the words of the Yenuka. Yenuka was a young child that spoke about some of the secrets of the Torah. And there it was explained how the light of the Shekhinah is compared to the light of a lamp. In order for us to better understand some of the Kabbalistic concepts, so sometimes we need to borrow from the physical world a mashal, some sort of an example that we can relate to. So even though it's not exactly the same, we're talking about a spiritual light, but in order for us to understand how it works, there is an example there of how the light of the Shekhinah is compared to the light of a lamp. That in order for the light of a lamp to continue to illuminate, it needs both a wick and oil, right? So a Jew has to be constantly aware that the Shekhinah is around, is above him. And he needs to provide that Shekhinah with oil, which in this case means good deeds, mitzvot. For what reason? So that the Shekhinah can continue to be connected to the wick, which is his body. You see the mashal, you see the comparison? So the Baal Tanya will get into this subject a little bit more in depth in asking, why is it necessary to provide oil for the Shekhinah through ma'asim tovim, through good deeds? After all, the neshama is a chelek eloka mima'ala. The soul is a part of God, it's divine. It can serve as the oil. It can serve as the connection. It is a part of Hashem. Why do you need, on top of that, ma'asim tovim, mitzvot, good deeds? So he says like this. If you recall, the neshama has its own consciousness. It is aware of itself. It is an entity that is created. It therefore cannot be mitbatel and unite with Hashem in the same way that the mitzvot can. Because what are the mitzvot? The mitzvot, the commandments, our deeds, are part of Hashem Himself, part of His chokhmah, of His wisdom. They are an expression of His will. They can easily be united with Hashem. Not so much the neshama, which is a separate thing, even though it, of course, is not completely separate. Everything is part of Hashem. We've said that many times. But it has an awareness. It is something. So it just cannot annul itself. Like oil is consumed and is transformed into light. Right? Little by little the oil is consumed and it becomes light. The neshama does not just consume and become part of that light of Hashem, because it is its own entity. It has its own awareness. It needs a medium to accomplish that connection, and that is the mitzvot. So the mitzvot, in a sense, is the fuel, or the oil, as he calls it, that eventually, as the mitzvot are being observed, as they're being performed, they unite, they connect with Hashem. So in order for the neshama to unite with Hashem, it needs to do it through observing the mitzvot. Now, when the neshama connects to Hashem, this happens on two levels. Level number one is through the learning of Torah. By learning the Torah, the light of the Shekhinah reveals itself within the neshama and within the garments of the neshama. If you recall, the thought and the speech, machshava and dibur. That's the learning of Torah. So we have a revelation of the Shekhinah taking place within the neshama by learning Torah. In this way, the learning is able to connect or unite with the light of Hashem. But wait a minute, what about the light of the Shekhinah connecting with the body? We talked about a wick before. Wick, like a candle. So in order for the Shekhinah to dwell or to connect or to rest on the physical body or on the nefesh, the living soul, for that you need practical mitzvot. You actually need to perform deeds, physical deeds. That's the way it's done. So these physical deeds can only be done when the neshama is in a physical body with the body and the nefesh habehemi. That is how the mitzvot are therefore performed, with the living soul, living spirit, and the physical body. So it's a combination of the two. We have the learning of the Torah on the one level that is being accomplished through learning, through the thoughts, through the speech. But you also need to do something with your hand. In the physical world, the physical body needs to perform mitzvot for the Shekhinah, for the light of the Shekhinah, to connect to the wick, to the body. And of course, to illuminate it, to animate it, mitzvot need to be performed. Later on in chapter 41 through 50, we saw a little bit more of a clarification of the various approaches of the service of Hashem, how to go about them with love and fear of Hashem, various ways to accomplish that so that there could be more kavanah, more intent, because that makes the mitzvah a lot more complete. And now we've come to chapter 51, which is going to talk about this light of the Shekhinah a little bit more, continue on from where he started about that Zohar. And even though usually when the Zohar speaks about oil, it's talking about the Sefirah of Chokhmah. Here, when oil is discussed, it's more going to be about the mitzvot. We're talking about the ultimate goal of creation. So the focus here is on doing deeds. So this perek and the following prakim are important because, as I said earlier, we will get a better understanding of how this happens, that the Shekhinah actually resides in this world, especially on certain people more than on others, in certain places more than on others. And he's going to explain how the mitzvot are derived from Chokhmah. And therefore, because of that, they can act as the oil to enable the Shekhinah to reside on the physical body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through the chapter from inside, because I find that sometimes it's just easier, it flows better, and like this we can cover more ground. So הנה לתוספת ביאור לשון הינוקה דלעילי. To elaborate just a little bit more on what the child began to explain in the previous chapter, he says we need to first understand what is this Hashrat HaShekhinah all about. That the Shekhinah would dwell bebet Kodesh HaKodashim, in the temple, in the Holy of Holies. So some of it we're going to talk about now, and the rest in the next chapters. We need to understand what is really meant by that the Shekhinah dwells or resides in this world. What does it mean? After all, Malek Kol Haaretz Kevodo. Isn't the Shekhinah or isn't Hashem everywhere? So what does it mean that we point to a spot where the Shekhinah is residing? This, by the way, can explain many Ma'amarei Chazal, many sayings of our sages that talk about that the Shekhinah went into exile with us, that the Shekhinah is at the western wall. What do you mean at the western wall? Well, I was told that the Shekhinah is in the synagogue. As long as there are 10 people, there's a minyan. You see how there are many sayings in the Gemara, in Chazal, that talk about the Shekhinah's presence. So the first thing we need to understand is, how do you explain the difference between Hashem really being everywhere versus the Shekhinah, which is the divine presence, being in one particular spot? Let Atar Panuim says there's no spot that does not have the divine presence. But he says like this, the inyan is as follows. There's a pasuk in Yov that says, "Mibsari hezeh eloka." I can see from my flesh godliness. The simple meaning is, if you look at your body, there's a lot that you will be able to tell about Hashem's creation. Not just about the physical body, in other words, that you will be able to tell a lot about yourself. From yourself, you will be able to understand other aspects of creation as well. From the physical self, you may be able to gain a greater understanding of the spiritual world as well, because there's some parallel between the physical. There's a parallel between the physical and the spiritual world. What we have here is some ways duplicated in the spiritual world, or I should say the other way around. What is up there is somewhat duplicated in this world. Just that here it's physical and there it's spiritual. So in this world we have a physical body. We have a spiritual body in the upper world. I was saying this morning to a group of people that think of an astronaut. An astronaut, when he goes to space, they give him a special suit. Mm-hmm. That's the suit that he has to use if he wants to survive in space. You cannot survive without that special suit, pressurized suit. So same thing, the neshama comes down to this world, it enters into a physical body. That's the suit it wears in order to perform the mitzvot. So he introduces here this pasuk because he tells us, because from one's flesh, from one's physical body, you can gain certain insights as to what exactly Hashem did in the upper worlds, because they're very similar. שכמו שנשמת האדם היא ממלאה כל רמ"ח איברי הגוף מראשו ועד רגלו, in the same way that one's neshama, one's soul, fills the entire body from head to toe. So listen carefully here, because he's going to make a distinction, remember, between the whole versus the unique spot. The neshama does fill the entire body. אף על פי כן, nonetheless, עיקר משכנה והשראתה היא במוחו. Its main place within the physical body where it dwells is in the brain. So we need to understand that. What does it mean, the main place? Is that where the office is? In a way, yes. That's where the function of the neshama is really observable, or or sensed, experienced. But it fills the entire goof, the entire body, because it needs to animate the body. It needs to provide something, vitality to the entire body, every single square centimeter. So the neshama goes from head to toe, but there's a main place where the neshama resides, and that's in the brain. And from the brain, it spreads out into the rest of the body, into all the organs. From the brain, it spreads out through the rest of the body, and every limb, every organ receives from it a certain vitality to live, plus a special power that is fit for that organ according to its composition and its nature. For example, ha'ayin lir'ot, the eye to enable it to see. The ozen, the ear lishmoa, to hear. The peh, the mouth, ledaber, to talk. Haraglaim lehaloch, and the feet to be able to walk. Kanireh bechush, as we see in reality, shebamoch margish kol nif'al, the brain actually feels all these senses. When you walk, the brain knows about this. Everything goes through the brain. Everything that happens in 248 organs, and everything that goes through them or happens to them is recorded, or somehow the brain knows about it. It is felt there. It is known there. So הנה, אין שינוי קבלת הכוחות והחיות שבלבי הגוף מן הנשמה מצד עצמה ומהותה, שיהיה מהותה ועצמותה מתחלק לרמ"ח חלקים שונים, מתלבשים ברמ"ח מקומות, כפי ציור חלקי מקומות איברי הגוף. Don't think that the various abilities that are expressed in the various organs of the body are all to be found in the neshama. In other words, don't think the neshama has 248 abilities or expressions. And therefore, when the neshama comes into the physical body, it sets up shop. This power here and this power here. No. All the abilities are in potentia. In other words, the potential is there in the neshama. But the neshama is not physical, so it's not divided into these abilities. It's only after the neshama has entered the physical body that somehow that potential that was there expresses itself differently in the various organs. Otherwise, if you would say that all those powers are within the neshama itself, they are to be found there, then it is a form, it's a physical form, and it's not. It would resemble the body. That's not true. The neshama is divine, it's spiritual, it is not physical, it does not resemble the body. So you cannot say that those powers that are eventually expressed through the various organs are actually found in the neshama in the same way, divided up into 248. All that power is there in the neshama, but it's in potential. אלא כולה עצם אחד רוחני פשוט ומופשע מכל ציור גשמי. ומבחינת וגדר מקום ומידה וגבול גשמי מצד מהותה ועצמותה. In other words, the neshama is spiritual. It has no limits, no boundaries. It is simple. It is one spiritual unit that has no physical description or shape or form in its essence. And it's not really possible to say that this neshama is to be found more of it in the brain than in the feet. Because what did we say before? It goes from head to toe. It is evenly everywhere. It's really not physical that you can point to a spot. Here it is. More than it is here. That's something physical if you point to a spot. So the neshama in reality fills the entire body. Not one limb or organ more than another. רק שתרי"ג מיני כוחות, now he switches to the 613 powers versus the 248 limbs. Because there are 613 functions or powers. The 613 מיני כוחות וחיות כלולים בה, במהותה. It contains 613 types of functions in its essence, לצאת אל הפועל, that can eventually become expressed. They can emerge from the neshama. The neshama is so powerful, so unique, that it can provide and split itself in a sense, or maybe a better word just would be to provide different abilities once it's in the physical body. That's just the way Hashem created it. לצאת אל הפועל והגילוי מהאלם, it can come out from that which is concealed and reveal a certain power, which will do what? להחיות רמ"ח איברים ושס"ה גידים של הגוף. It will vitalize or animate the 248 organs, limbs, and the 365 sinews, blood vessels, שבגוף, in the body, על ידי התלבשותם בנפש החיונית. How does it do it? When it dresses itself up into the animal soul, animal spirit, שיש לה גם כן רמ"ח ושס"ה כוחות וחיות אלו, which also has the 248 and 365 functions or powers that correspond to it. All right, so far you see why he brought this verse. He wants to compare. He wants to use the physical body that we are somewhat familiar with for us to better understand what is happening in the spiritual worlds. When we're talking about drawing the 613 functions or powers from the concealment of the neshama into the physical body to vitalize it, to animate it, it is on this that they said, this is what they meant, that the ikar, the main spot, the main location where they are to be found, or where it is to be found, this koach, this power of the neshama, is in the brain. Because this is the main place, again, it's not a contradiction, it appears to be strange. Here we just said from head to toe, now we're saying the main. But the main meaning that where it is more revealed, right? You get it? Where it is more revealed and where it first comes into is into the brains. So that's what they meant when they said that the main mishkan ha-neshama, the main dwelling place of the neshama, is in the brain. That's what they meant. That's the main place, and that is where it first comes in the brain, and therefore they מקבלים תחילה הכוח והחיות הראוי להם, לפי מזגם ותכונתם. Therefore, they are the ones that first receive their vitality, their power, that is fit for them, according to their composition and their nature. שאין חוכמה, בינה ודעת, we talk about the intellect. That is vitalized first. בכוח המחשבה, the ability to think and reflect. כל השייך לפועל, everything that is related to the brains. ולא זו בלבד, אלא גם כללות כל המשכות החיות לשאר האיברים, גם כן כלולה מלובשת במוחין שבראש. And the vitality that is going through the rest of the body is also at first to be found in the brain. And we know that. Just look at the whole entire nerve system. Look what's going on in the brain. Look at all that operation that is going on that is controlling the whole body. So the brain is where it all begins. So he says, all the vitality and all that is provided for the rest of the body is coming from the brain. ושם הוא עיקרה ושורשה של המשכה זו. That's where the source is. That's where it all comes from. בבחינת גילוי האור. In other words, if we compare this to the revelation of the light, the החיות, and of the vitality של כל הנשמה כולה, of the entire נשמה. ומשם מתפשטת הערה לשאר כל איברים, and from there, that flow, or that illumination, scatters to all the organs, ומקבל כל אחד, each one receives a כוח וחיות, the vitality and the power, הראוי לו, כפי מסגור תכונתו, according to its composition and nature. Whether it's כוח הראייה, whether it's the ability to see, vision, that מתגלה, which is revealed in the eye, כוח השמיעה באוזן, the power of being able to hear, and that is in the ear, etc. As we said before, it all begins from the brain, where the neshama dwells, from where that koach scatters to the rest of the body. So we have the neshama all over the body, okay? But we have it starting in the brain, from where it eventually sends the signals or sends that unique function to the various organs. And as we know, he says, "Kol hakochot mifresh min hamoach, kanoda." As we know, all the physical powers, everything is derived from the brain. Everything goes through the brain. The brain is the computer. That's where the operation begins. Because that's where the main place where the neshama resides. Bebchinat gilui. What does that mean? In other words, now he explains. What do I mean by main place? As far as revelation is concerned, where is it most revealed? Where is it most seen? In the brain. It's everywhere, but that is where it's mostly seen. So the gilui of that koach, of the neshama, is more experienced in the brain. Because that's when you see, that's where you see the entire vitality reveal itself there, from whence it eventually will scatter. רק כוחותיה של כללות החיות מאירים ומתפשטים משם לכל איברי הגוף כדמיון האור המתפשט ומאיר מהשמש לחדרי חדרים. Here's another example. Says they all begin in the brain, from where the rest of the body receives its power, its vitality, and it could be similar to the following analogy of, imagine the light of the sun that spreads out from the sun and is able to enter and illuminate all the rooms of the house. So it begins there and it spreads out to the rest of the house. And then he says in parentheses, but wait a minute, isn't the heart central to the body? And we've spoken a little bit about the centrality of the heart. After all, the blood flows through the heart. Without the heart, you can't live. In some ways, the heart is central. Mm-hmm. So he says, "Afilu halev." No, even that heart which is central, it's true. But even the heart, mekabel me'amoach, even the heart is receiving its power from the brain. And because of that, the Kabbalah explains, "Lechen hamoach shalit alav betoldato." That is why the brain has an advantage over the heart, the intellect over the emotive powers, from the very beginning, when the human being is born. Now, even though man does have a very powerful evil inclination, and he's easily tempted, and the heart has a lot to do with it, because the heart desires. Nonetheless, we're told something very important here. A very important idea is that still the brain has the ultimate advantage. It may be a big struggle. It's very challenging. That's what this whole book is partially about. The many challenges that people go through. The conflict between the good and evil inclination, or sometimes the conflict between what the intellect says and what the heart desires. So you have this constant war. But the intellect is the ultimate powerful one because of its ability from Hashem. It was endowed with the ability to reason. Take your time, think about it, evaluate it. And obviously, if that individual whose reasoning has Yirat Shamayim, has the fear of heaven, then he will reason properly. The head will not be muddled with what the heart desires. Because that's what happens. People's head, the brain itself, which is the intellect, gets confused, is influenced, and makes the wrong decisions. So he's saying, so the reason why the moach is more central than the heart is because even the heart receives the power that it has from the brain. Obviously, we can't show this, demonstrate this biologically, because it's not about biology here, or I should say, it's not about the anatomy of how the body works. You know, we don't see this power coming from the brain, but we do know certain things about what the brain does and how it plays a very important role in directing everything in the body. So it is easier to understand from this example how Hashem conducts himself in the world as well, as we will see. He continues on to say, in the same way, Kacha mamash al derech mashal, based on the example that I just gave you, the analogy. En sof baruch hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu memale kol amim, leachyotam. Hashem fills the entire universe to provide it with vitality. Now what's interesting about this vitality, is that it didn't just happen once. At the very beginning, Bereshit, ex nihilo, Hashem created the world and just let it be. And now everything is happening by itself. No. What people don't realize is that there needs to be in every part of creation the vitality of Hashem there all the time in order for it to exist. Otherwise it would cease to exist. It wouldn't survive. The sun would stop being a sun. Everything in the universe would stop. There's something in even the inanimate objects, like planets, somewhat inanimate, there's something that's making them run, stay alive. So Hashem fills the entire universe. For what purpose do we need to know this? Because le'achyotam, he's the one that animates everything. Ubechol olam yesh bru'im le'en ketz. And you should know in all the worlds that there's more than one world, because there's spiritual worlds. There's many, many creatures, unlimited, betachlit rivo revavot minei madregot malachim u'neshamot, and many, many levels of angels and souls. Now that's an important point that he says here, levels. Because when we're talking about the spiritual world, we're talking about different kinds of levels in spirituality too. Some higher and some lower. And that goes along with what we've been saying all along, that there is a part of this creation where the revelation of Hashem is a lot more powerful and less tzimtzumim. So the same thing, he says, you will find that this revelation of Hashem is not exactly equal everywhere, even though Hashem is everywhere, because even though he's everywhere, the revelation is different. In some places it's more concealed, in some places it's more revealed. Same idea, gavoa al gavoa. You have worlds, one on top of the other. Why is he telling us one on top of the other? Because of the same idea here, that there's different levels. How could there be different levels? What does it mean that there are different levels? There are some that are able to experience Hashem more directly, because less tzimtzum, less contraction, less concealment. As we've been saying, the essence of Hashem is everywhere the same. Like we said, in the physical body from head to toe, it's all there. The neshama is everywhere. Not more here than there. No. It's everywhere. So same thing with the presence of Hashem. He's everywhere the same, whether it's the upper worlds or the lower worlds. Kemashal ha-neshama, like the mashal I just gave you with the neshama, with the soul. וכמו שכתוב בתיקונים, דהיו סתימו דכל סתימין, פירוש דאפילו בעלמין סתימין דלעילה הוא סתום ונעלם בתוכם, כמו שהוא סתום ונעלם בתחתונים. In other words, as it says in the Tikkunim, that he is concealed of all concealment. What does that mean? That regardless of the world we're talking about, he's always concealed. In other words, it's the same Hashem. It's the same presence everywhere. Even in the worlds that are concealed to us, there he's concealed too. So there's no real difference in Hashem's essence. Everywhere he's the same. So what is different? going to tell us. It's the revelation. The revelation is where we can see the difference. So the essence of Hashem is the same everywhere. What is different is that there's something about the revelation of Hashem that happens in some areas, in some places, more than in others. Even in the upper worlds, they don't have a grasp of the essence of Hashem. Even though they're closer in some ways more than us, they're more spiritual, we're more physical, we have more concealment, but still, they don't have a good grasp of Hashem. So in the same way that He is all over in the upper worlds, He's here too, the same. Everywhere. There's not one spot without Hashem's presence. So what is the difference? So what is the difference between the upper and the lower worlds? What is coming down from Hashem, that light that is permeating the lower worlds, is different in various areas. The Gilui, the revelation of that which is concealed, is where we notice the difference. So even though we said that Hashem is everywhere, it's the Gilui Meha'elem, שזה אחד מהטעמים שההשפעה והמשכות החיות מכונה בשם אור. He says, and that is why, he says, that flow, divine flow, is called light in the Kabbalah. It needs to be called light for a good reason. Because what does light do? Light illuminates. We don't want to use the word shefa here, which is the term that we're more familiar with, that there's a divine flow that we receive here in this physical world, that we, of course, are able to experience. Here we're talking about something that we don't readily see, but it's called this for a reason. Because what does light do? What does light do? Light illuminates. And that is the reason why it's called this way. So the differences between the various worlds is in that flow that comes down in as far as what is revealed and what is not, or how much is revealed and how much is not. And that flow that comes down le'achyot ha'olamot, it comes down to animate the worlds, the abruim and the creatures, שבהם שהעולמות העליונים מקבלים מבחינת גילוי קצת יותר מהתחתונים, because the upper worlds will receive a greater illumination or a greater revelation than the lower worlds. וכל הברואים שבהם מקבלים כל אחד כפי כוחו ותכונתו שהיא תכונת ובחינת המשכת הפרטית אשר אין סוף ברוך הוא ממשיך ומאיר לו. And all the creatures, whether in this world or in that world, will receive a certain vitality that they need according to their composition and their nature. Malachim have a different composition than human beings. So what they get from the light of Hashem is different than what we get. What they get is a little bit more revealed, than what we get. Each one according to what it needs will receive this hamshacha hapratit, this custom-made, customized divine flow that it needs to survive. והתחתונים, and the ones in the lower worlds, אפילו הרוחנים, even those that are spiritual, אינם מקבלים מבחינת גילוי, they do not receive that divine flow as revealed, רק בלבושים רבים, only through many, many garments, אשר אין סוף ברוך הוא מלביש בהם החיות והאור, that Hashem dresses up that divine flow with many, many garments or concealments. He dresses up the chiyut and the or, that vitality and the light, Hashem mamshich umeir lahem, that He brings down and illuminates them, lachyotam, to animate them, to give them vitality. וכל כך עצמו וגברו הלבושים, they're so great, so numerous, those garments, those concealments, they're so big, אשר אין סוף ברוך הוא מלביש ומסתיר בהם אור, האור והחיות that Hashem conceals that vitality that is coming down, עד אשר ברא בו העולם הזה החומרי והגשמי ממש. It's so concealed, that light, that is why we have a physical world. To go from a spiritual to the physical, the concealment is so great. Very, very great. In other words, that is why we have a physical world. The light of Hashem is almost not to be seen. And because of that, everything is like dead. In other words, even though things are alive, but spiritually speaking, where's the light of Hashem? We don't see the spiritual world. It's so concealed. And that is how this physical world is created, this material physical world. And this is the way Hashem animates or provides vitality to this world. A light that is covered and concealed in the many, many garments that they conceal, cover up that vitality. It is so concealed and so hidden that you basically do not see any vitality whatsoever. All you see is physical matter. As I said, they appear to be like dead. But that's just on the outside. Today we know what's inside, more or less, every physical object. Atoms, neutrons, electrons. What's going on there? Tremendous power within every object, the inanimate objects. We're not even talking about those that are on a higher level, plant life, or animals, or human beings. These are various levels of physical existence. But even that which is inanimate and appears to be completely dead, no life whatsoever, in our eyes, even that has something. Betocham yesh or v'chiyut, they have a light, they have a vitality, hamehave otam me'ayin leyesh, that continuously recreates them. As we say in the prayer, mechadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit, that Hashem repeats creation on a daily basis. We don't see it. Yeah, you see the sun go up, right? You see life continuing on until it's interrupted by a hurricane. I mean, more or less, we see life go on, the same. But is not just operating on its own. That is not just a life that is continuing on by itself, that got started at one time, it just goes on. The earth gave a spin once, boom, and it's continuing to spin. It may appear like that to many people, but no, there's some driving force behind the earth rotating on its axis, the light of the stars, the heat coming from the sun, and the light as well. Life, the cycle of life, whether it's rain or human beings being born and dying, all of that, all of those operations in the physical world and all the operations in the spiritual worlds that we're not really familiar with except for what we've learned about them. All of that is being continuously recreated in a sense because Hashem provides them continuously with the chiyut, with that light which provides them with the vitality, which recreates them from nothing to something, ex nihilo, like in the very beginning. So they should not go back to being nothing. Because if Hashem would remove himself for one moment, that is exactly what would happen. That they should, in order that they should not go back to being nothing, keshehayu, as they were in the beginning. And this or, this light, hu me'en sof baruch hu, this is the same light of Hashem, called the Or En Sof, the infinite light. The same light that is everywhere. The exact same thing. Rakshanit labesh, in this physical world, it's being dressed up, belivushim rabim, in many garments that conceal it, as it is explained further be'etz chaim. She'or v'chiyut kadur ha'aretz achomri, the planet Earth. He explains there, Rabbi Chaim Vital in his book Etz Chaim, explains that the light and the vitality of kadur ha'aretz, this planet, the physical planet, Hanireli Nebasar, that we, with our flesh eyes, can see, it is from the lowest of the lowest in this world of Sefirot, because you have the 10 Sefirot, and within each Sefirah you have 10 Sefirot as well. So you have Malchut being at the bottom, and we're talking about Malchut of the world of Asiyah, which is the physical world. So you have Malchut of Asiyah. And he says, Kadur Haaretz, this globe, is from Malchut of Malchut de Asiyah. So it's the lowest of the lowest. But still, Betocha, in this Malchut, you have Malchut de Yetzirah. You have all the upper worlds included. Ad shebetoch kulan, Yud Sefirot de Atzilut HaMiyuchadot b'Matzila and so on. Until, if you connect all of the Sefirot, which connects through Malchut, because Malchut is where all the 10 are comprised or united, and each one has something of the upper one above it, so it comes out that you have, even in the lower world, you have the light of Atzilut, which is the closest to Hashem of all, coming down and penetrating this physical world. So obviously this is a more Kabbalistic idea of how the Sefirot interact, how the light comes down through the various Sefirot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how they produce whatever it is that they produce in this world. Nonetheless, we see that the physical world is from the lower one. So the higher ones have a greater revelation than the bottom one. So even though the light of Hashem is everywhere, and even though the light of Hashem comes down from above all the way to the bottom, and it penetrates, but it's dressed up with garments, levushim, that cover up, that conceal the light, and it's because of that that we don't see it. It's not as clear. This is the chapter, and B'ezrat Hashem we will see a little bit more of it in the next chapters, where he continues to explain this idea of the Shekhinah. But just to end, it is a very deep idea, this whole idea of the light of Hashem permeating the worlds. And it's something that we don't fully understand because we are human beings, we're physical. And in learning Kabbalah, we're told, don't think that this is a regular light. This is just an example. There's a lot of analogy over here in order for us to better comprehend. So we're told to look at our physical body and see how the world is really like our physical body. In many ways, Hashem created us like He created the rest of the world. Take a close look and examine yourself and you will see. Obviously, people don't take that time to examine themselves, the brain, the heart, the limbs. You know, it's a very interesting comparison because there's obviously a lot of truth to this. But the main idea to keep in mind here as we're learning about this Shekhinah, the divine presence in this world, is that light illuminates. It is through this light that the Jew who observes mitzvot is able to provide it with the oil. And that, of course, will be able to help him, will vitalize him in a very, very powerful way, much more than without Torah mitzvot. Because we're talking about revelation here. We're talking about a light that will illuminate, a light that will give you more clarity and a whole different kind of an experience too. That is why it makes a world of a difference, not only in doing Hashem's will, because this is the purpose of all, to observe His mitzvot. No, it's not just about that. Remember, we started off saying it's about to elevate this world, to transform it into a more spiritual place where the Shekhinah can be, where the Shekhinah can dwell. To bring about a greater revelation. How are you going to bring about a greater revelation of that light? Provide the oil, and you will see it illuminate. And only the physical body can do it. That is the wick. That is the mitzvot that we perform that can connect to Hashem and provide for Him a dwelling place here. This is what the Bet HaMikdash is all about. This is what the service of Hashem is all about. The focus of Hashem on this particular planet more than the rest of the world, even though He's everywhere. But here's the focus. This is the brain. This is where I want to reside. This is what I want to accomplish through, of course, you. So that light is concealed as it's come down to the physical world, and now it's up to the Jew to reveal it. And obviously, this can be done. And this will be done, B'ezrat Hashem, in a very powerful way. When Mashiach will come very soon.
Amen.